Good Gabs, sponsored by Skillskin, a nonprofit organization empowering individuals with disabilities through employment. Good morning, everybody. Today we have Gabe Minchow with Northpoint, Washington. Thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Thrilled to be here.
Gabe, how long have you been in Spokane?
April 6, 2014 is when I arrived.
Okay, so this is starting to feel like home.
Yeah, I would say so.
Coming up on 10 years.
It's coming, yeah. That is on the horizon for sure. That's a big one for me.
What brought you here?
So I'm going to self-disclose a little bit. Hopefully it doesn't make anybody uncomfortable. But I came here on a one-way ticket for treatment for alcoholism. Yep.
From where?
From Southern Oregon.
Okay.
The Rogue Valley.
Well, tell us more.
I will tell you more.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's a, where do you even start?
So you didn't even know where Spokane was?
Podcast with like a bomb. To be honest, I didn't know where Spokane was, but that's kind of funny because I had been to Spokane once before. And I do tell this story quite often. When I'm sharing with people my experience, strength, and hope, it's a couple years prior, I was coming through with a band. So I grew up in the Rogue Valley. I spent my 20s in Portland.
Okay.
Funnest decade of my life and the most damaging decade of my life. I was in an indie rock band, and I'm a classically trained cellist and vocalist. So when I graduated high school and moved to Portland, getting the opportunity to utilize my musical talents in a different setting was like just floored me.
I bet.
Yeah. So I came through Spokane, I think it was 2011, and I was riding around in a party van, with the band, and we played at one of the bars just down the street from here. And it wasn't until I came back through in 2014 and I was in the back of a treatment van on my way to a meeting that I recognized the bar and where I was.
I've been there.
It's like, what a turn of events. At the time, I hadn't quite gotten into gratitude for my experience as an alcoholic in recovery. But that was an eye-opening experience for sure.
I can imagine so.
Yeah. So, my arrival in Spokane wasn't entirely by choice. I found myself in an intervention the day prior. My family and some of my closest friends that I grew up with were all gathered around, and it was a complete surprise to me. I didn't see it coming. But it was at the end of about 9 months of just total misery, trying to get sober on my own and succeeding for a couple weeks and then relapsing. And that tape just played over and over. So when they presented me with this, I refer to it now as opportunity.
Yeah.
I saw it as a ticket out of that mess and a ticket into the unknown, which at that time seemed like it had better chances for me than what I had been doing. So I was escorted here and picked up by the treatment center and brought into a house up on 5 Mile. And I had one condition, though. I said, I'll go ahead and try this. But if I don't like it, I'll give it a week. If I don't like it, I'd like the opportunity to come home. And they said, sure, you betcha. And so after a week, I'm on the phone.
Of course.
I'm like, yeah, you can come home if you can get here.
You're like, oh, there's a caveat? Dang.
I had a backpack with 10 cents in it and a change of clothes. And there was snow on the ground in April of 2014. And so I said, well, I could walk out of this because it's not like a lockdown facility.
Sure.
And I could probably make it a couple days. I've gotten pretty crafty and creative over the years in my alcoholism. I could find some fair-weathered friend somewhere. Or I could keep the roof over my head and the food in my belly that's being provided. And that's when I started listening, when I went to meetings and started to hear the message and got a sponsor. And that's when recovery really began. For me, it was about a week after I got here. That
seems quick and awesome.
Yeah.
I was sitting in basically I was in a hospital in Alaska, and the doctor, we were about to go on this crazy fishing trip, and the doctor looked at me, and I was, partying pretty hard back then. And he's like, Steve, you're just not going to wake up one day. Because, he had been used to, treating, it's pretty hardcore alcoholics up in Alaska and, native population. They have, stuff that affects them. And so he just cut right to it for me. And that didn't even work for me. I was like, I was like, oh, okay, I'll die. It's good.
Yep.
And it was later when one of my close friends, he just was like, Steve, I don't think I can be friends with you anymore. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
That was the moment for me when I'm like, okay, I got to like really look at my life, because at that point I was just kind of like trading up friends.
Mm-hmm.
And, as long as I was doing just a little bit better professionally than everyone else, I was good.
Yeah. I can relate.
Man. Yeah, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I was one of those alcoholics that ended up in the psych ward multiple occasions because they brought me in via ambulance for seizures. And there was a moment in December 2013 where one of my best friends, drinking buddies, looking back at it, but at the time felt like my best friend in the world, beat the crap out of me and kicked me to the curb. And that started another downward spiral that wound up with me in jail, actually, for the first time. The places our addiction can take us.
Damn, I was not expecting this conversation this morning, Gabe, but I am sure happy
Here we go.
I'm sure happy you're here, man.
Living in the moment.
No doubt.
Hopefully
Absolutely.
I don't regret it later.
Eh.
But that's what they teach us in recovery is our character defects, our assets blown out of proportion.
Makes sense.
So we can flip the narrative. What used to be something that I regretted is now something that I can share and inspire hope in other people. So
Well, I preach authenticity a lot. That's something where
Exactly.
my happiness came from, is when I started just being real.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes these are some of the real things too, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not always pretty.
No.
In fact, a lot of it's not.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so 2014, you're in Spokane. Don't know anyone here, and
Not a soul.
so well. Okay, take us further. How did that evolve to like saying you want to be in this community?
Well, like I said, it was about a week in that I started actually listening and hearing the message when I went to meetings. I work a 12-step program, got a sponsor, and it was contingent to graduate in my treatment program to begin the steps with a sponsor. I think you had to be on step 3, So after 30 days, I graduated to phase 2. I moved into a different house and was given the opportunity to look for employment. And I don't think it's unique to me. I think most alcoholics is either go big or go home. And so I was out there canvassing. I was walking to interviews. I turned in like 100 applications my first week. And I got to choose between 3 different jobs. And I landed with an insurance company as an intake analyst. I was putting together the RFPs for I forget what they called them, but the people who went out, basically like the sales reps who were pitching these to larger companies.
Yeah, when it all goes out to bid and all that.
Yeah, so I
Okay.
did the
So you're in the
legwork,
background.
packaged it up, and then they took that and sold it.
Yes.
Which was cool. It was a temporary gig. I got hired through an employment agency, and it lasted about 6 months. But that gave me the necessary work experience, because prior to that, my work history was pretty eclectic, but it kind of finished in the service industry in the restaurant. But that 6-month stint with that insurance company gave me a foot in the door, and I happened to know somebody who his family there was this little startup organization about 30 years ago that grew into a larger company, got bought out by an insurance company. But the son of the founder was still the acting president at the time, and I was connected to his son.
Nice.
So that's what got me the interview. The experience got me the job, and I had my first full-time salaried position. It was probably 7 months into my recovery. And so that gave me the stability and the foundation to really work my program and get more involved and meet people and build a life here.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
really welcome to Spokane too. In my experience, this town, it's just you never know who you're going to meet, who you're going to be connected to, but that's where the opportunities come from.
Yeah.
And that part of your story, that is Spokane through and through.
Yeah. Spokane's taken care of me this whole way. It's not to say that the last 8.5 years has been all butterflies and rainbows. I've had some pretty serious, I call them crisis chapters. And I won't get into that too much, but personal, that I've just fallen back on my program. I've fallen back to the basics, going 90 meetings in 90 days, getting connected, getting outside of self. And Spokane, my higher power just has not let me down today.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not always clear why I'm going through what I'm going through until I'm looking at it in the rearview mirror. But things just keep getting better and better. And, when I first arrived, I'd hear old timers say, I now live a life that's beyond my wildest imagination, things like that. And it is true. Gosh,
It is true.
Like, I can start to say that now. I'm seeing all these promises come true.
I know it just takes a little time, right? You just,
Time takes time.
Word.
I might drop a few cliches.
I
think
love
I
it.
already have.
Well, cliches are my favorite. So
All right.
thank you. I think our
Very
listeners can definitely appreciate that, right, listeners? Yes. Yes is the answer. So what are you doing now? Like what kind of work are you into these days?
Yeah, so somewhere along the way, I heard somebody say, don't get involved in the treatment field, addiction recovery, until you have 5 years under your belt. And that was kind of in the same breath as you're a newcomer for your first 5 years, which at the time really bothered me.
Right? No, what are you talking about?
Man, I'm 2 years into this thing and I'm still a newcomer. But for whatever reason, I followed that suggestion. I haven't followed all of them, but I followed that one. And so it was November 2019. I was about 5.5 years sober. Reached out to a buddy of mine who was working at a treatment center and told him I was interested in a career change. I just graduated with my master's. I had been kind of moonlighting as a rideshare driver during my master's. I had separated with that insurance company I worked at for 4 years, the second one. And so I just got a gig, entry-level group facilitator, and I met some really cool people in that process. And I realized that's where I wanted to be. Like this, for the first time in my life, and especially in my professional career, I'd found a fit that I got to feel that passion and got excited to show up to work.
That's an amazing feeling, huh, when that happens.
It's super cool.
I didn't even think it was
living your
possible,
purpose.
right? I thought it was a lie, actually. I kind of took my grandpa's words. It's like, you put your head down, son, and you just work real hard, and, things are going to work out for you. And so I just really never thought that was possible until I got into the work I'm in right now, working in the disability community. It's like purpose.
Yeah. Living with purpose.
Whoa, that's powerful stuff.
Crafted this mission statement for my master's to improve the quality of life and make a tangible impact in people's lives. I think I flipped that because it's been a few years, but I found that I was doing that I was making an impact in these people's lives, and them finding recovery and hearing a message of hope was improving it. So
you were in.
I was in, and it was cool. I picked up as many groups as I could. They hired me for like 5 groups a week. I think I was doing like 15 or 20.
So I know maybe our listeners would like to understand, like, what is a group facilitator? Like, what does that job look like?
Well, it can look different depending on the organization. The one that I was working at, I want to say that I got a little bit lucky in that I didn't have any work experience. And I didn't have any clinical expertise.
Right.
I had lived experience, and they were cool with that. You don't find that everywhere. So what it looks like is you go in for an hour, maybe an hour and a half, depending on what level of care of the group you're facilitating. So oftentimes the shorter groups are for the people who are coming in fresh off the streets, the detox and inpatient groups. And, an hour and a half is like way too long.
It's an eternity.
You get about 20 minutes in, and people want to go outside and have a smoke break. And the hour and a half groups are the people who have kind of completed the inpatient setting and have transferred to like a sober living component, who are doing outpatient groups. And some of the outpatient programs are more intensive, like there's partial hospitalization program, which is 6 hours of programming per day, 5 days a week. And then there's IOP, intensive outpatient, which is generally speaking 3 to 5 days a week for 2 to 3 hours, depending on the organization. So group facilitating, you've got a topic underneath a modality, and generally speaking, they'll provide you with some sort of curriculum.
Okay.
Which I leaned on when I needed to, but for the most part, it was like, yeah, I've been talking about this with my sponsor and with my sponsees and in the rooms for the last 5 years. I'm pretty comfortable talking about this. And that's what I discovered. It wasn't so much about having all the answers, as much as it was finding, the realization that the group is the agent of change. So these people, they're just like you and me.
Oh yeah.
However long ago it was for you, and 8.5 years ago for me, who are smart, they're intelligent, they're wonderful human beings that have something to contribute, even if they don't realize it themselves. So it's kind of a process of like opening them up to the world and their peers,
And
and
themselves.
hearing them talk about these concepts and ideas.
Yeah, it's a kind of an amazing thing that happens when you start to actually hear your own voice, and you might even believe it. Oh, yeah. Like, oh, okay. Yeah, maybe I'm ready to look deeper.
Yeah, and I could understand at that time like why people suggested wait 5 years before you get involved, because I think if I had started sooner, the line would have been too blurred for me. Like when I'm in control of my life, that's generally a bad thing. Like I shouldn't be driving the bus because my best decision making got me to where I was towards the end of my 20s. So, finding sobriety and finding recovery is this really delicate balance of like learning and taking pride in it, but staying humble and right-sized. And when you get into that position, you walk into that room as the facilitator, you've got 12 people just immediately looking up at you and putting you on this pedestal like you're some sort of recovery guru. And
you're just a dude
piercing that veil and saying, look, guys, I'm exactly as far away from the next drink as you guys are. I just happened to put a few days together where I haven't drank. And I'd like to share that with you, like how I did it.
Love that.
Yeah.
I'm curious, and I know we get asked this a lot in the work we're doing is, how do people access these services? Because I know some of the questions that come up, it's like, oh, it's going to be too expensive, or I don't know if my insurance pays, and things like that. Just, I know there's a wide range of help out there. Like in your experience, how do people start the process?
Yeah. I mean, there are a variety of ways to enter a treatment program. Some of them are harder than others. Some of them require more determination and grit and the gift of desperation than others. And some of them, by luck of the draw, it seems like they know the right person who knows the right person that has a program that has a bed open, and it's just like they're in. So it's not the same for everybody. There are people in outreach who their life's work at this time is to network with each other, and be able to recognize when somebody raises their hand up for help, whether it's through a Google search or a phone call or an email. The hope is that regardless of their demographic, regardless of what kind of insurance they have or their financial position or their geographical separation, there's going to be some program that offers the services that they're looking for. So does that kind of answer the question?
Absolutely it does. Because, I think it's just like this nebulous thing. You're like, oh, how do I do this?
The how isn't necessarily the hardest part. I think the hardest part is wanting to do it, right? I mean, from my experience, going to a 12-step program or going to treatment was like the last option. Like that's where the people with real problems go. That was my narrative at the time. Because my image of an addict or alcoholic was, I hate to say it, sorry to stereotype, but some guy under a bridge with a brown paper bag. And I was going to work, and I had a car and a relationship and a living situation. I had all these things, although I noticed over time they were gradually deteriorating.
Right.
The relationship got more and more toxic. The car stopped running and paint peeling off of it.
Yeah, there might be a couple dents.
Yeah, the job, it was like I'm dry heaving and throwing up in the bathroom. So over time, those things all deteriorated. But I still didn't identify as an alcoholic until after I was in treatment. And I started realizing that there are a lot of people out here, and it affects all walks of life. It doesn't discriminate. Like you've got executives, you've got entry-level employees, and you've got everything in between. And that's when I learned that I had found my community.
Well, that's awesome to be able to be in one's purpose to, help others and just connect. Okay, you've been in Spokane almost a decade now. What surprised you about this community, or like why stay? Like why here?
I don't think there's a simple answer to that question. There's a huge draw for me to be closer to my family. I'm a father now. I have a 3.5-year-old and a 5.5-year-old. But I am so plugged into this community at this time, and it's working. I've managed to build a life that I'm proud of. It's not to say that I wouldn't be successful wherever I went. I'm just kind of enjoying the win streak.
Yeah. I know you want to just keep that going, right?
Yeah.
Well, do you have some other kind of tidbits around maybe the work that you're doing right now and the company you're working for?
Sure.
Like, I know they're getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And the need is arising. Like, we need more services in Spokane and the surrounding areas.
Yeah.
What kind of programs are you guys running right now?
So I was hired on by Northpoint to represent one of their other brands called Imagine by Northpoint. And Imagine started a few years ago down in Boise. And so they opened their first Imagine. And within 6 months, they opened another one. And 6 months later, another one. And they're all within like a 10-mile radius down there.
Wow.
And they're all full, which is great for business, obviously. But it's also kind of a sad reality that we're facing. And I think a lot of it can be, maybe not a lot, but there's a chunk of it that can be attributed to technology, the transmission of information, how rapid and fast it is, and harmful content
Yeah.
that our youth are being exposed to.
I know they're growing up real quick.
Real quick. I mean, I was born in 85, and so we had a computer in our home in the 90s, and my dad had his own business. He had a cell phone. Like, I grew up with this kind of technology as it kind of spiraled. But it's different now. It's a lot quicker and a lot more harmful. And there's a lot of like social bullying going on.
Right.
There's a lot of suicidal ideation as a result. And, you know, the last couple of years have been really unique for adolescents going to school in their bedroom in front of a computer screen. That's definitely had an impact on our community. So anyway, that's kind of a long way of saying Imagine really took off in southern Idaho. They opened a new one over in Bellevue.
Okay.
On the west side. That one took off. And so our open house here in Spokane Valley, actually on Pines, 924 South Pines. Our open house was on August 24th. And I did my best to kind of shout from the rooftops, hey, this is a new offering in our area. We're in network with most of the major insurance companies. We'll
Awesome.
even shoot for single case agreements on Medicaid. We can't promise it, but we're having huge success with it. And, you know, it kind of seemed like it was a little bit slow for the first couple of weeks, but then once school started, my phone would not stop ringing, inundated. So our census filled right up for the staff that we had. Our space, we can go to twice our capacity, and we're doing that right now. We've hired more staff because our wait list is out to February right now, and I hate to advertise that because it will be changing. We've just
Right.
hired a new clinician, a new case manager, a new assessor. So some of those spots that are booked out in February are going to be bumping up sooner. But, you know,
So this need is in every community.
it's huge.
Yeah.
It's absolutely huge. And
What
so,
kind of work are you doing with the kids?
Yeah. So we're licensed for both mental health and substance use disorder. But I want to say that with, you know, an explanation.
Sure.
We're mental health primary. And a good way to think about that is if a kiddo is needing detox, specifically for something that could be life-threatening like alcohol or benzodiazepines, we have to, you know, ethically, we're insisting on addressing that first, and then they can come to us. We're an outpatient clinic. We offer 2 levels of care, partial hospitalization and IOP. And it's not to say that we can't address issues around substance use, and we certainly will. But it's not necessarily a disqualifier from our program if a kid is using it experimentally, like smoking marijuana at a party on a weekend. Like, we're going to address that.
Right.
And Northpoint as a whole is really big on getting off of all substances. So that's what we do out there.
Wild.
Yeah.
Is Northpoint standing up any other kind of clinics out here? Yeah, the secret sauce. But yeah, we know that the need is much.
What I'll say is we had a building. We had a couple of buildings. We own them. And we were getting ready to start those up. COVID kind of threw a wrench into a lot of things.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm guessing you guys experienced similar issues with regard to staffing. It's a
It's
precarious,
impossible to hire people right
It's
now.
a precarious time to make a huge investment in a new offering. I think it bodes well that Imagine is taking right off the ground. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see something in the near future, but I can't definitively say yes.
Well, understand, like, we're having our hiring challenges, no doubt about it. And we try to help a population that has a historic 80% unemployment rate. And so you're like, oh yeah, well, it should be easy to help, access people and show them, this employment journey and get on board. And we're just having a tough time. So we're just we're reimagining our way of doing work and telling our story. And so we can expand because, there's lots of opportunities out there in the employment world. We just need to find a way to tell our story better.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So a lot of people have come on our show and we've talked a lot about the homelessness issue in Spokane, and we keep hearing
It's a hot topic.
Right? It's the topic. It feels like it. But a lot of misinformation too going on. When you read the newspaper, when you're seeing the news, it's like, oh yeah, 80% of people experiencing homelessness or, have mental health issues. It's like, well, is that really true? I can't, I don't know what's true anymore, and I'm in this world. So it's kind of, it's hard to understand, where do you go? How do you help? And maybe from your perspective, if you could share with us, maybe we have family members, maybe we have friends, maybe they're experiencing homelessness, maybe they're deep in addiction. What's the first step?
Well, I think even if we accept that notion of 80% of people experiencing homelessness have mental health issues, if we accept that as fact, the argument can be raised, what came first, the chicken or the egg? I think a lot of it is systemic. I don't think that we can easily solve this issue with, putting up a building and putting them in there and putting some clinicians next to them and even providing them resources. That's going to solve the issue. I think it's going to help a tremendous amount of people in the short term, kind of dig themselves out, give them the tools to dig themselves out of that situation. But even then you have to question, do they want that? Because I think as humans are really adaptable and really accepting, and we get used to our routines, habits, and patterns. And so, I'll just throw this out there. I'm not the biggest volunteer in the world, but I did volunteer, and I'm tied to Jules Helping Hands, Julie Garcia, Camp Hope. And, going out there, yes, you have the cases where people are like, I need to get out of here. I want to get a roof over my head. I need help getting access to a job. I'm a felon and it's hard or difficult. And so even in that case, you can provide those resources. But then there are also people who are accustomed and comfortable in that lifestyle, who don't want to go to detox,
right,
who don't want to get off the opiates, who are comfortable playing Russian roulette with fentanyl. So that to me is a good sign that it's more systemic than we want to admit. And I think, not that this is the end all solution, but I think it starts with our youth.
Right.
I think addressing these issues before they become chronic is really important. And I'll speak from my own experience, growing up. My childhood wasn't particularly traumatic compared to some of the other stories I've heard, especially when people are navigating their path of entry into our treatment program. But trauma is trauma. That's one thing I preach everywhere I go. Crisis doesn't happen to a certain type of family or demographic. It happens to everybody. And if we don't address and unpack and heal from that trauma early on, then it's going to show up at some point. For me, it was in my 20s and pretty hardcore. So I look back and I realize that my parents were doing their absolute best.
Sure.
And I feel like if somebody would have pulled me from, I was a straight A student for the most part. I think I had a couple of B's. And, full disclosure, my senior year, I did have 1 C- in economics because I had
Gabe.
checked
Jeez.
out at that point. I went to my first party, found alcohol, and was like, I'm done. But no, I was a good student, and I was very involved with extracurriculars. I was in every single high school play. I played basketball. And, looking back, I realized that from sun up to sundown, I was running on anxiety. Like I was running away from my feelings, and it just looked good on the outside because I was accomplishing things.
Yeah.
But if somebody could have identified that I was struggling and pulled me out of my environment for a couple weeks, a month, 2 months, and like talked to me. How are you feeling? Like, what is going on for you? What did it feel like when your parents separated? Then I think perhaps some of the damage that I caused in my 20s could have been avoided. Not to say that I regret it, because that's kind of sculpted me into who I am today. But if you look at some of the harder cases, the people who are, experiencing chronic conditions, or their conditions have turned into something else that's irreversible. Some of these people are homeless today. What could have we had done more along the lines of early intervention?
Well, and that makes sense. If you're talking about a systemic issue, well, you got to go to the beginning. Mm-hmm. That is in childhood.
Yeah.
I just learned about ACEs scores not too long ago. It's maybe a couple years now. And that blew my mind. I was like, what?
Well, it might be a little bit more because, I hear about that. But again, I'm not a clinician. So
well, see, neither am I. So I can't really talk to this very much. So this is my layman terms. Is essentially the studies came out that if certain experiences happened in your childhood, and there was a score, I think like maybe 1 to 9, and I'm sorry I'm screwing this up, listeners, but if you reach a certain number on that score, all of a sudden likeliness of addiction, obesity, all sorts of stuff, just your life span is going to come down. And just really interesting. I encourage you to just go check it out.
Okay.
Because when it came, when the science collided with oh yeah, shit happens when you're a kid. It was really powerful for me to understand that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the work that I think on the volunteer level for myself, I want to get more involved, helping the kids.
Yep.
They need it. We talk about that in the disability world too, because when historically, it's not everyone, but we've seen a pattern of this. Is you might be in the school system, you're labeled for one with a disability, and all of a sudden you're not getting talked to about your job when you graduate. It's talking about services. And right there, I just think it's a huge issue with what we're working on, because we're talking about employment. And if you never saw yourself as being employed, and I remember getting talked to when I was a little kid, oh yeah, you're going to have a job, you're going to do stuff. If you don't have that opportunity, it's harder to overcome that. And so that's kind of stuff we're working on with the kids is, what are you going to do? There's it's a big world, lots of opportunities.
Yeah.
But working on,
there are plenty of jobs out there, right? That, they're offered to people with disabilities. Just because you have a particular disability doesn't mean that you can't be a productive member of society.
No, it does not. But maybe that's a systemic thing too. It's just because humans have accepted this, I'm claiming we can blow that up pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. We just got to start younger, talk more, be more real, and then maybe we can make some change.
Absolutely. And I think there's a line that can be drawn between the disability community and the adult SUD, the people with criminal records. Just because they have a criminal record doesn't mean they're a bad person.
Right.
Doesn't mean they're unemployable. And so, there are organizations in our community that are really, my hat's off to them for offering those second chance opportunities for felons.
I know our account manager and recruiting czar at Skillskin, Dana Devine, she's really working hard right now to try to see how we can help in that world too, because even our program, the Ability One program, addiction is counting at this point if it has kept you from getting a job or maintaining a job. So that just kind of happened in our program where that's come to light.
So let me make sure I'm understanding this. Hypothetical, you have somebody applying for a job who has a gap on their resume, and you go, how do you explain the gap in your work history? And they go, well, I'm going to get vulnerable here. I was struggling with addiction, and I went to treatment, and that's why I didn't work for a year and a half. You're saying that
person is who we want to start talking to. And we don't know if we'll be successful, but we got to give people a chance here. It's you can, Yeah, so we're going to try.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, if you get a call from Dana, pick up that phone.
Okay. Well, the case managers and the employment specialists at all the treatment centers need to be aware of that.
Okay, so there's employment specialists in this world too?
Yeah, I was one of them.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And, I'm going to brag a little bit if that's all right.
Please do. Yeah.
When I was doing it for that particular company, we had probably somewhere around 36 people in our outpatient program at a given time. And I did that for about a year. And the turnover is, 1 or 2 a week.
Sure.
So over a year, I don't even know how, that's too much math for me. But let's just say there are 100 people that I was doing employment consulting with. We had a success rate of 95% or better.
Holy smokes.
And a lot of them were felons. But it took a lot of creative energy. You have to find the people that are willing to at least give them an interview.
Right.
Yeah. So
I'm curious.
call me and I'll get you connected.
Woohoo. That seems like a very high rate. So I would love to hear more about like what kind of story were you telling to these employers to like just have them say, yes, all right, I'll give someone a shot. Like what was there any secret sauce there?
Well, I don't know about secret sauce as much as it is just showing up and being real. Oftentimes these jobs are entry-level jobs and they're manual labor jobs. So let's not beat around the bush. Like it's a job, it's a paycheck, it's something to get them started.
It's a start.
And that's what I would tell the clients. This isn't your dream job that we're looking for. We're trying to get some employment on your recent work history. So you don't have to love it. You don't have to want to be here forever. But most of the time, once they started working, they found value and self-worth. And even though going into it, they're like, oh, I'm going to hate, manufacturing windows or whatever. Most of the time, they're like, I am so happy. I feel so accomplished, and I can't wait to see what the next step is.
You are right. There are parallels between the work we're doing and in the community that you're serving. Some of the same language we talk about. I love that.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, let's make this bridge a little stronger, right?
I would love to. Absolutely. Skillskin for me has kind of always been a little bit of a nebula. Like, I'm not quite sure. Like, it seems like there are a lot of different services provided. I'm not quite sure how I would fit in there. Dana's smiling at me. I'm guessing this isn't the first time you've heard this.
Yeah, no doubt. Like, we've been around this is year 52. And we're just trying to continue to tell our story. I mean, our primary focus is employment with people with disabilities. We do that as a federal contractor. We kind of call ourselves a social enterprise. We don't raise money. We just do work for a fee-for-service model.
Okay.
So we're out in Air Force bases in 3 different states. We're here in Spokane. We're in Great Falls, Montana, and Cheyenne, Wyoming. We have about 250 employees across those operations. Just across the street from here is the federal courthouse. We do all the custodial services over there and take care of all the grounds. So when it's snowing, we're out pushing that snow around. We have a laundry company. Where we're doing lots of laundry, manufacturing. We make stuff. We partner with folks like Kaiser Aluminum and build some things for them. It's we just did a project for Travis Pattern. So we do a lot of different things, and we're just starting to tell our story more now and really getting connected to the community. I mean, that's why we're here. That's why we're doing this podcast.
That's fantastic.
We're proud of what we're doing, and we know we can't do it alone, right? We need help, and we need to know our community. And so bringing in people that are doing the good work, like yourself, who just wants to be like, hey, I'm in my purpose. I'm ready. How do I connect? That's who we're trying to connect with, and just, tell everyone a little bit about what's going on.
That's awesome. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the Isaac Foundation is in the old Skillskin building.
You are correct. Yeah. So even that kind of partnership. Yeah. Holly and that group. Holly was on our podcast a couple weeks ago.
Shout out, Holly.
No doubt, Holly. What up? Yeah. Just, she told some great stories too. And just the work they're doing. So yeah, we're connecting with them. And so we put together a nice little partnership to help them expand their square feet, really help expand the playhouse, and they're starting to serve more people. I cannot remember how many people they've touched this year. I want to say it was close to 1,000 people. She said 1,000 people and families. And yeah, so that's the kind of partnership that, we're trying to be a part of.
Yeah, on the wall in there, she's got all, I don't know if she still does, but they were doing a fundraiser. She had all those envelopes. Did you see
I
those?
am number 15.
15, very
Yeah.
nice. I think I'm number like 82 because I had 82
Big
bucks in my
spender.
pocket.
Big spender.
But weren't there something like 1,000 envelopes on the wall?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, and they're just really committed. You know what I love what they're doing right now is they took that parking lot and now they are renting spaces, and anytime there's an event at the arena. And I'm like, this is genius. It is so smart. Parking for a purpose is what they're calling it. I'm like,
Nice.
money.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of Skillskin. We have an employment services group as well. So we're out working with the county. We get a referral in, and then we help an individual find employment in the community. So that's another big chunk of what we do.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, you name it, we try to do it, and we'll try anything once, and we try to fail fast, and just stay focused, and if we're living by our values and trying new things,
I can get behind that 100%. I
Heck
don't
yeah.
always say the right thing or do the right thing, but I'm trying. I'm pushing that envelope, kind of like what we opened this discussion with.
Yeah. Well, I love it. Gabe, I'm wondering, anything that you'd like to just share with our listeners? Maybe some parting thoughts?
Yeah, if it's okay, I would be remiss if I didn't kind of plug our larger company a little bit. Although we're not established in the Spokane Coeur d'Alene area. We have a hospital over in Edmonds, and we have one down in Boise. It's brand new, 44 beds.
Cool.
And this is for the adults. This is true co-occurring, high acuity mental health coupled with substance use disorder. A lot of the barriers that are traditionally there when you're seeking treatment are knocked out of the way with Northpoint. So anybody with schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, somebody on a CPAP machine, somebody with mobility issues, those aren't barriers anymore. If adults are seeking treatment, whether it's with Northpoint or they end up landing elsewhere, I'd love to be included and help facilitate that. I think our community, as we've seen, some of the options have kind of fizzled away over the years, and so yes, I recognize that we're not in Spokane. However, and my story is a testament to this, sometimes a geographical is that missing ingredient. So it might be a good idea for somebody to get out of town for 28 days, do the detox and inpatient, and come back, and I'll get them plugged in with Breakthrough or Colonial or YFA or any of the resources that are out here for outpatient. But I would like to put it out there that I can be a resource for adult SUD.
We are so thankful for this conversation. I know our listeners are probably on the edge of their seats, just like I am. And
I
just,
hope so.
Absolutely.
That's nice to hear.
This is how we change the world, right? And just having information and just knowing where to reach. It's so important. And when people, you care, and we can tell. And just, we're grateful. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. What an honor.
Yeah. Have a great day, Gabe.
Thanks. You too.